Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Krusty, and today we're going to be looking into what are blueprint interfaces. So by the end of this video, hopefully we can answer these three questions, and that is, what is a blueprint interface? Why do Unreal Engine games use them? And how can we use them for our own current and future projects? So before I get into any explanations, I want to just show off a little demo that I made. And this is showing off what an interface can do, okay? Don't worry about the weird shadowing or anything like that. But we see here, if I click E, it's going to shoot a line trace, and that's going to be for interacting, okay? If I click E on the door, it's going to do some weird rotating stuff. Again, nothing really useful here, okay? Same thing with the light. If I click E, instead of rotating, it's going to turn it off, right? So what's really going on here? If I get out of here, an interface is basically a way of communicating between classes, okay? What's going on here is that I've made an interact interface, okay? And I'm going to show you how to do all this in a sec. But I've made an interface which is an interface, or a blueprint interface, is basically like a class. It's a class that holds functions that can either all functions and events, okay? That's all it is. So it's not an event or a function itself. It actually holds, just like how an actor or a character or a pawn class, how they hold variables, functions, macros, custom events, stuff like that. An interface or a blueprint interface holds just functions and events, okay? And then you can add those interfaces onto a certain actor or character, just like how you can with an actor component. If you've ever made one of those, with an actor component, you go and you do everything you want in there. Let's say it's a weird attacking system, or it's a weapon component system. You do all your functionality, all your variables that you need, everything inside there, and then you add it onto the character, and the character then inherits all that. Instead, what we're doing is that it's similar to an actor component, but what it's doing is that you're not actually making any blueprints or something like that. Instead, you are simply just defining functions and input and output variables if it has any, as well as events, okay? But event interfaces allow actors, character classes, all this stuff to interact with each other, usually without needing to cast, okay? It's very useful for things where you want the one event to be triggered or fired off, and depending on what it hits, do different things. Just like how with this door, they both use, the light and the door both use the one interact event, which is this, or one interact interface. However, they both do different things because I've defined what they do inside the actual class itself, okay? Now, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to delete this, okay? Can give you some errors because I've got references to it, but that's fine. Now, let's start off with making our first interface, okay? You can copy along, or you can do whatever you want to do. Because this is a little bit more complex, this is going to be similar to that casting video that I made, which you've probably already watched. And I explained how that is probably going to take you a little bit to really understand what's going on. And if it hasn't, and it's clicked in straight away, then congratulations. Same thing with this. If you get it straight away, awesome. If you don't get this straight away, go and either rewatch this video again or go watch some other YouTube videos. There are really good YouTube videos out there. Go watch them because it is good to get different perspectives from other people, and you might just click after seeing a certain video. So to get a blueprint interface, you can either go to blueprints and go blueprint interface, or you can just simply type interface like this in the search tab, and you got blueprint interface. The naming conventions for this, like the standard naming convention, is using BPI, and then underscore, and then whatever name you want. Reason why is similar how you do BP underscore whatever you want for your actor. If you have an actor or a character class, any of those common classes usually do BP for blueprint. For this, you do blueprint interface, so it's BPI. That's basically it. And then I'm going to just do interact, okay? And then you go there, open it up, and there you can see it's already creating a function for us that we can name. Let's just do interact, okay? Boom. And that, like, if you want to, that's basically it. Okay. But what's really going on here? So what's going on here is that this is an event. Okay. Even though it looks like a function, it's actually an event because it's got no input or output variables or parameters. Okay. Like I said before, this interact interface actually holds functions, which even though they're all called functions, they can be used as an event. Depending if it has an output variable, it won't be an event. It will actually be just a proper function. If it has no output variables, so you see if I click on this, if it has no output, it will just be classed as an event, like a custom event. So this is, again, like I said, a class, and you can add as many as you want here, as many functions. So let's add another one. It has to interact with input. So I'm going to show you the difference between all of them. And then we're going to add another one, and we're just going to interact with output. Awesome. Let's compile. See, you've also got the tabs if you want to switch to it that way, or you can just double click it. Okay. Now you might be thinking, okay, cool. Why can't I do anything with this? I can't pull off the execution pin. I can't move it. I can't use the arrow keys to move it. What the hell is going on? The reason why is because, like I said, you define what the functions, events, or input or output variables are, but you don't actually do anything with it. That is the job of the actor class itself to do stuff. Okay. If you just have this interact event, you don't do anything with it because you define what this is like a custom event. Okay, you call this, and this is going to get fired off in a class, and you define what you want to do with what you want it to do when this interact event gets fired in the actual class itself. You define everything, all the parameters, everything in there, and you actually do the stuff in the class itself. And I'll show you how to do that in a sec. If we go to interact with input, we can do an input, and let's just call this boolean, okay? Or just bool. Boom. Very simple. And with output, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to call this instead int. Short for integer. Awesome. Double click on that. There we go. And so you can see now it's got this set up, okay? So what this is going to do now, this is going to act as a function and not an event. And I'll show you in a sec why it can be useful and how it's different. Okay, so how do we actually add this into our classes? So this is like an actor component where you have to add it to a class for it to do anything. So let's go and open up our light and our FanDuel. Okay, these are going to be our two classes that we want. I'm going to remove this. So you don't have to worry about all this extra stuff. This is actually just a custom event called trigger light that fires off here and sets the intensity to 0. Basically turns the light off. This here goes and activates some other stuff on event tick, and it will just rotate the door by 5 on the y-axis every tick. But what's most important is this part here. So this is going to be the trigger door, which is here, and we're going to fire this off. Okay, let's make sure we compile both of them. Now to add it in, we have to go to our class settings. We can see here in interfaces, you have inherited interfaces and implemented interfaces. Inherited interfaces, I'll show you actually implemented interfaces first, and then you'll understand inherited interfaces. When you go and add, implemented interfaces are it's going to be an interface that we can add and implement into this class. So we're going to choose our BPI interact. Okay. Now you can see this little interface category just opened up, and you usually don't have this. Okay, if you see, if I remove this, yes, see, I don't know why there, but you see that got removed. So again, class settings and BPI. Just want to do interact, and see it opens it up again. Okay, let's compile. Now let's look into what's going on here. We can open it up, and you can see we've actually got a bunch of different, we've got all the functions that we made. If we go to our interact, we've got our interact with input, and interact with output. Okay, see, we've got all them here. Now, before I get too into it, you can I want to say this first, you can use interfaces usually like two different ways I like to think of it. There are a lot more other ways. Two main ways you can go about them is you can either have the one blueprint interface class that just holds the one function. So let's say if I have a BPI interact and I just want that to have the one interact function and that's it, okay? This interact BPI class basically is the event itself, okay? However, let's say if I have a BPI underscore character, okay, and this is a blueprint interface character class. It doesn't inherit from character, but we'll just call it a character class. We can then implement that into, let's say this Fiendal is our character, okay? We add it onto our character, and then what we can do is we can have a bunch of different functions that are all for our character. So whenever any other class calls our character or calls those functions, we have multiple different functions and events and blah, 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 whatever, all for our character. Or, like I said, you can just have just one function, and this BPI interact is basically the event itself. It just acts like one. It's up to you. It's not really a massive deal, because in that way you can have like BPI interact, and you go, okay, cool, that's just for the interact implementation. You're gonna do BPI look at interact, and that can be like for looking at a class and showing up a little prompt saying pick up or do whatever, interact with. So there's so many ways you can use these. Well, let's get straight back into it. I don't want this video to go for too long. Now you can see here our interfaces. We've got two that are in gold or yellow, and we've got one that's just gray. Now you might be thinking, okay, cool, what's the difference between these? So our interact, if we actually double click on it, because we can't actually drag them out, okay? Because these are events. The reason why they're events is because this interact has no inputs or outputs. This interact has an input, which acts just like a custom event. These both act like custom events, but this one acts like a custom event with an input. So if we go like this and we double click to actually add it in, and boom, we've got our interface in. See, we can pop it in there. Same thing with interact with input. Okay, let's put it here, plug it in like, okay. Now you can see this is exactly just like a custom event, but it's got a Boolean variable, and you can see we can't actually, even though it looks like a custom event, we can't actually interact with it. We can't do anything in the details panel. That's because that's what we change in the actual BPI class itself, okay? So these gold or these yellow little symbols just show that this is an actual event that gets fired off and will trigger something in the class itself, okay? And with the input variable, it's just like a custom class. So we can say, hey, we want this to do something. If it's true, maybe trigger this or whatever you want to do. Okay. Well, let's get rid of that. This interact with output, you can actually pull it out. Okay. That's fine. But usually you don't pull it out in this class. You can if you want. This is actually meant to be accessed by other classes. Okay. This is a function that's meant to be, I mean, you can imagine like making a function here and calling it. Again, if I go, let's say, make a function called trigger or calculate, and that, I'm not, it doesn't do anything crazy. Let's just make that an integer and put int, and we're just going to do something stupid like a random float. Returns a random float between, yep, that's fine. We're just going to convert that. I don't really care, to be honest. But basically what this now does, this is a stupid little function I just made, and it's going to give us an int between 0 or 1. Well, it's probably actually just going to give us 0, to be honest. We can just make this a float instead. Just call it float. Okay? Boom. What is going on here? I can't connect float. Alright. Okay, gone a little bit off track here, guys, but that's alright. So you can see here we've got these two functions. This is a function. They're both functions, okay? However, this one I've made just in my class. If I want to call this, okay, if I want to go back to my character, yeah, you can see this is actually how I called it. So I did my line trace. This is my character. After click E, do a line trace, get the hit actor if I hit anything, and then I'd call that interact event. What I can do is I can either go, hey, if let's say I want to get this calculate event, I'll have to go cast to BP fan door. Okay. Add fire off. And then what I'll have to do is I'd have to go calculate, boom, like that, and it will give me an output, and I don't know, let's say print string, and then just plug that straight in like that, boom. Okay, what that's going to do is that's going to cast it, and it's going to give us a random thing. If we click on this, okay, boom, it's giving us random numbers down there or up in the top left. Okay, but we don't want to use casting, okay, because it also was saying, hey, this is only going to happen for this specific actor. We're going to get rid of this. Okay? What we then do is that instead, okay, let's get rid of this calculate. Instead, what we've got is we've got this interact output, okay, and you can see I can actually, if I double click on it instead of the other ones, if you double click on these, it's going to add them in. But instead, if I double click on the actual function itself, the gray one, we can add functionality in. So let's say we do, we're going to do random int. Okay. And let's just do 5. Okay. So I'm assuming it'll be between 0 and 5. Awesome. So what this is going to do now is that we can go to our first person class and we can call this. We can call we can type cool. Actually, no, we can type, what do we call it? What to interact with output. Okay. Interact with output. And you can see here it's got a little F and it's not the event. Okay. Boom. Like that in there. Like this in there. That's very messy, but I don't care right now. Okay, so now what we've done is that on our fan door, we've done this event, but also on our light, we can add in, if we go to our class, let's add in that BPI interface. And this is where it becomes quite cool. We can do the same thing here. Well, let's say we just want this to be 5. Okay, it's going to always be 5. Okay, when we hit the light. Now if we go to here, we hit the door, it's going to be random numbers. But if we hit the light, it's calling the exact same event function, but we've done something different. It's always going to be 5 because we've made it for the light. Even though these are calling the exact same functions in our class, you can see it's just calling the one function and it's not casting. It's not saying, hey, is this hit actor a blueprint fan door or a blueprint light class? It's just going, hey, let's get this hit actor. We're going to add that's the target. And if it has this blueprint interface in the class, we're going to call it. Okay. And instead of being like a normal event where it gets fired off in the class, it's simply just calling the function from the class how you would with a normal function. Instead, you don't need to do any casting, stuff like that. And it can get different variables or different outputs, stuff like that from different classes, even though it's the same function. This might sound confusing, so I know it is a little bit weird. But if we go to the last thing and we just type, hey, interact, boom. What we're doing now is that, yeah, we are simply just going to get a hit actor, and if it has this interact event, it's going to fire that off. So if we go to here, that if the class actually has this interface and it has this event interact event in it, it's going to fire this off. So that should work like that. We don't have that set up yet, but you can see how useful these can become. So I know this was a little bit of a long video, guys, but I guess one last thing as well is that if I go to my class settings, I said that I was going to tell you about inherited interfaces. All that is that you can see if I go implementable interfaces, it's BPI interact. Okay, if I go to folders, I go to my fan door and I right click and I go create child blueprint. Okay, I don't care what it is. You can see now if I go to class settings, it should have, there we go, inherited interfaces. Just like how when get rid of this, in our main class, we have a bunch of our functions and variables, stuff like that. This, okay, also inherits the extra things. So if we go and type, let's say in our fan door, we've got some extra stuff in here, is active. If we type is active. Oh, I don't think it's in there. Class defaults, there it is. There you go, is active. So you see that Boolean variable that we've got in our FanDuel is there. Okay, it's in here, but in our child version, it's in the actual details panel itself. Just like how when we go to here, it's inherited because the parent has the actual BPI class. The child has the BPI class inherited from the parent. I know that was a lot, guys, so I thank you so much for making it to the end. I hope I actually explained it all well. I know that was actually a handful, and there might have been a few things where I didn't explain it completely correct. Again, this was a very confusing kind of lesson. But Blueprint interfaces, basically they do communicate between classes without really needing to cast and to get different outcomes from the same event or functions. So that's basically it, guys. I thank you so much for coming in and watching this video. And if you have any questions, just put it in the comments below and I'll answer them as soon as I can. Awesome. Well, thanks, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.